Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. Today we have Nathan Drake, former Parsity student, current software engineer. We're going to learn more about how he got his first job, the windy path it took from musician to software engineer, what he learned along the way, and the mindset it took for him to make that massive switch. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really excited to talk with you. So a couple months ago, Nathan came back to Parsity and did a tech talk, a walkthrough for the students there. It was really good. I actually learned quite a lot in that one.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I like talking about it. So it's always nice when I can help people understand it as well.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what are you working on? Like, what tech are you using right now?
So my day job is I'm a front-end engineer at Parsity, and I work on the design systems team. So we make the components that the rest of the organization uses: the buttons, the forms, the inputs, modals, etc. And the tech stack is pretty similar to what I learned at Parsity right now. I mean, it's TypeScript, which wasn't in the program at the time, but TypeScript, React. We use Emotion, but or like style components. But we're currently going through the process of potentially changing to that. And in my personal projects, I've kind of switched over to using Tailwind.
Nice.
I've been recently sold myself on that. Actually, as a part of pitching it to my team, I sold myself on it and now use it full time, kind of in the same vein of learning things to teach others. But my first paid gig was doing freelance work in the Web3 space. So like the day I finished Parsity, I got like a contract gig in the Web3 space, and I still do that stuff to this day, like on the side, nights and weekends. Actually, if I've hired a couple other Parsity students to work with me on that when I don't have time. And so that's what on the side, it's still full stack stuff on the side, still React, TypeScript mostly, but then I have some backends I have to manage. And then with the Web3 stuff, I have to work with all the blockchain packages that interact with blockchain and that kind of stuff.
Quick plug for Parsity. This week, we have a massive discount if you apply early and save your spot and join us for April to learn how to code, get a job in software, and come back and maybe talk to me on the show about what you did. Anyway, back to the regularly scheduled episode. This is really interesting. So you went to Parsity, you learned like full stack curriculum. How did you go from that into Web3? How did that work? And what did you have to pick up along the way to do that?
Yeah, so it was kind of simultaneous. So like I talked to Aaron and committed to Parsity in like August of 21. And towards the end of that, I started picking up on NFTs. That was when NFTs were starting to go crazy.
Yep.
And I was already kind of like into Bitcoin, Ethereum, but then I just kind of saw this NFT trend and was like, they need a lot of software developers for it. And so I just kind of like, while I'm starting Parsity, I'm just going to like try to learn as much as I can about it. I really enjoyed the NFT space. I met a lot of friends I still have to this day, but for the tech stuff, Aaron connected me with somebody who needed some work, who had a Web3 startup, and then through that started my own kind of company, agency, whatever you want to call it, hiring. Or I got 3 or 4 clients doing that, and one of them I still have to this day. And so in terms of learning it, it was just I didn't have to learn smart contracts at first. That's what you hear when you think about software developers and blockchain, is learning smart contracts, either written with Solidity or Rust, and that's a whole other thing to learn.
Yeah.
And but you also just need to connect those smart contracts to front ends in React.
I'm impressed, man. That's cool, but it also like reinforces this idea, this observation that coding is a foundational skill. Like you took the stuff you learned, and you had a bit of a background in coding before Parsity as well, right?
Yeah. So I started, I had an app idea that I was in the music industry for this, and I wanted to make this music collaboration app. And I had a friend who was a software engineer at Google at the time, and I conned him into helping me build it, and we quickly realized he didn't have time for all of it, so I started learning just trying to learn how to code, and he sent me to this so the stack then was it was a React app, built on Django, which is a backend full stack Python framework,
Yeah.
and, so he sent me to a React course, it was a Code Academy React course, it was like an 8-week kinda like sprint through JavaScript and React,
Oh yeah.
and it was way over my head, um, didn't feel like I understood any of it. By the end of it, I didn't know what I was doing. I somehow got the certificate, but I still don't like, I had no idea how my app was working, and so I kinda, like it kinda made me put it down for a while because I was just, like I just thought it wasn't for me, and then, eventually came back to it, but instead of starting in JavaScript, I started in Python, and then it started to click more. I think that Python's a little less syntax heavy.
Yep.
Um, things like if you're used to making spreadsheets, it was kinda like the function started to click in my head there, whereas, like, a loop in JavaScript is kind of hard to understand at first, but a loop in Python or in Excel is very direct, and so, like, the syntax made sense to me. And so eventually, let's see, that what I say, that was 2018. By 2021, I had kind of like poked around in Python for a while, found Parsity. Aaron told me it was, all JavaScript. This is kind of like the best way to start to get a job. And I was like, cool, I'll just go back to JavaScript. At that point, it really, really started to click for me because this was basically the third time I've tried to learn a coding language.
Ah, okay.
And so I feel like that framework's helped me a lot where, um, I think that's why a lot of people struggle when they start a boot camp learning a language the first time. It's hard. To me, it takes 3 times learning a coding concept to really click. Like the first time, you're like, "What the hell is this?"
Yep.
The second time, you're like, you start to get it a little bit, but you don't really know what to do with it. And then the third time, it's like you actually understand it and know how to use it. And so it takes a few times before it understands, and it's sometimes hard to have the patience or like, um, just it's hard to understand. Like I don't understand this now, but if I keep going, I will. And so not everyone gets those what extra 3 years of poking around in code to get to understand that. But it certainly helped me because once I got to varsity, I was able to kind of power through it.
That's really interesting. And maybe I shouldn't even ask this because I'm a varsity, but like if you already kind of knew how to code and you had all these great resources, what made you think, yeah, you know what? Now I'm also going to like pay for a boot camp on top of that.
Yeah, I needed direction and I need structure. I'm like Aaron Hayslip and specifically, he is really good self-motivator and he can have an idea and launch a project and it will work. I'm not that person. I need structure. I need people to help me. And so I was I got laid off from my music job when COVID hit and went back to school, finished a business degree, and I really wanted to get in product management because I
Mhm.
was like, this just seems like an easy way to get into tech, which is not true.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's
Think again.
I yeah, I think that I have kind of the, I guess, soft skills to be a good product manager, but you need hard skills that you can prove on paper to get somebody to hire you. And so that was easiest to do with coding. So I wasn't even looking for a boot camp. A friend of a friend suggested I talk to Aaron and he had the boot camp and was like, well, screw it. I'll just do this. Cause I was like, either I'm going to love coding and just do that, or I can get into tech and then switch into product management. And, as soon as really dove into the coding, I never really looked back. I just, I like the tech side of it. Um, so it was kind of um, an indirect path for me, but it really worked out, and I'm blanking on the original question, but,
No, that's
that's
fine.
kinda
I
like
was
how I
just
got there.
kind of like going through, kind of what I assumed you'd say. Like, I think people make this assumption, like, hey, if you could just learn to do it all on your own, I mean, all the resources kind of are online, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a
yeah, yeah.
reason why people go to a university or a boot camp Or like even me, like 3 years into my career, I went to another boot camp after I was like already being paid because I'm like, I just need to know. I need somebody to like make a structured way for me to learn some stuff, like data structures and algorithms, for example. Or like
Yeah.
now I became a manager and I'm like, I hired a mentor because I'm like, I just need somebody that already knows what they're doing to tell me because like I think I don't really know what I don't know at this stage. So that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
got so much background and you still said, hey, I'm going to go do this, and it worked out pretty well for you, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. So now I remember your question. The structure helps me. I did the full time program. Not everyone has the luxury of doing it. Like I said, I was already unemployed and had the benefit of having some unemployment, and then I had some side music gigs. So and I don't have kids, so I was able to commit to it full time, and I think that makes such a difference to just like have that structure, like, because the structure of Parsity, at least at the time, I imagine it's still pretty similar, is basically, here's a couple of lessons where you're required to make some pretty big mental leaps, and then you just have to make an app every weekend, and that was it.
Yep.
And that just, like, forces you to learn it, and on the part-time program, same thing happens, but having it can be a lot harder with the distraction. So, like, there's no way all of the material is available on YouTube and Code Academy for free. Not the same material, but, um,
Similar stuff
same info.
for sure.
Um, but it's so hard to take it all the way to get a job, whether it's motivation or structure or whatever. It's just, you and Aaron have put together a decent program where it's kind of like the minimum viable dose of hireable skills with React. If you can do some React and CSS, so you can help somebody on a team somewhere.
Mhm.
You may think that like no, you need to know 4 years worth of coding. No, you just need to know enough to like finish a few tickets, and then you'll make your way. So the skills there are easy, but like just having the path from like that's why I committed with Aaron was I had a I had currently had no path to a job, and this was a path to a job. Like basically, the promise is like, hey, get through this boot camp. You have a very, very high probability of getting a job after that if you do the work.
Yeah.
It still took me a while before I landed my first full time job, but
I want to get
it
into
still
that.
happened.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's the thing too. There's no timeline. People like now that I own Parsity, and I've known this forever. I was mentoring people to get jobs. I've been on the job market obviously before. I mean, I've switched jobs a number of times, and there's like no rhyme or reason sometimes. I've met really, really smart people that take like forever to get hired. And I've met people that honestly could barely code their way out of a paper bag, get hired like super fast. I'm like, how is that possible? On a side note though, you're a musician. Why are musicians so good at writing code? I swear to God, every like really good developer I've met has either been like mechanical engineer, musician, former military. There's like a few prototypes of people that tend to do really, really well in this industry. What are your thoughts on that? Why do you think musicians are so great at software?
Yeah. So I think it's two things. One, it may be a little bit of a survivorship bias, if that's the right thing,
Yeah.
where like a lot of us musicians, like we get our college dreams to play music. At the time I was in a band that was semi-successful. So I was like, it wasn't even a second thought. I'm just going for it. Well, before I know it, I'm in my 30s. I am quickly real. I'm totally burned out on the career, and it's not as fun as I want it to be. And I'm realizing like there's no path to like a six-figure salary with good health insurance and a 401k in this industry. It just doesn't exist. You can get to the where you're making an equivalent. It's kind of like you can either make a living in music or you get famous and do really well. But that's the 1% or less.
Yeah.
So I think a part of that is that a lot of people at the end of the music career, maybe early 30s, are like, what do I do? And tech, coding is it's the only path I know of to where you can get to a really good job without going back to school. It's like doctor, lawyer, et cetera, all these other great careers. You kind of have to commit a lot of time from now or have to have done that like in college. And so it's just like, it's an easy path. But in terms of the hard skills, I think that it's the right brain, left brain balance.
Mhm.
I think it's from the outside looking in, you might think that coding is super technical, and obviously it is. We're telling computers what to do, but you have to be incredibly creative to solve problems. And so, I think that musicians music's the same way. Same thing. You might think it's all right brain, very creative, but no, it's very technical. We got to make these notes work together. And so I've heard that the connection between right brain, left brain is bigger in musicians. I don't know if that's true, but we're at least used to using creativity and technical skills like at the same time. And that's what coding is. And so I think that that connection is not hard to do. And then the other side of, like you mentioned, like military and other engineers as well, I think it's just a getting shit done mentality. That's
Yeah.
all coding is somebody's giving you a problem, you just have to solve it. And it actually does not take a 4-year degree to do it. It doesn't take 20 years of experience to do that. The really experienced developers I work with that are great at solving problems are just really good at debugging. But really, it's just like you just have to believe whether you're year 0 or year 20, like if you're given a problem, you can solve it.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
That's funny. Yeah. I totally feel you on that one. Like there's that point because you're going to get a lot of problems. You just don't know how to solve. Like, and you have to get at some point you get enough confidence. It took me a long time now that I'm like, okay, I know I'll probably figure this out at some point. And it's like, yeah, it's creative problem solving at the end of the day. That's what we all do. I want to get to the job part. This is probably a part a lot of people are curious about. Can you walk us through? You go to Parsity, you're working. How did you get that first role? What was your like process to do that?
Yeah. So, like most of my life, it was a little bit of a weird path there too, as well. Cause so I finished Varsity May of 22, got my first job February 23. So, but I wasn't looking for a job that whole time because I had these clients in the Web3 space. So I was kind of like, since I was handed these projects, me and my best friend who did Parsity with me, Doug, he was actually on the podcast with me a while back with Aaron. We just kind of went all in on it. It was like, hey, can we make this work? Because the opportunity was there. Because we figured, worst case, if this fails, we'll be exactly where we were, but with a little more experience, like in terms of looking for a job. And so it went pretty well at first. We launched some Web3 apps for clients, got some checks, paid the bills for a little while, but then the market kind of like totally tanked.
Yeah.
And you know, Web3 stuff. I don't believe it's just a fad, but it does follow market trends big time, especially in terms of VC money that goes to clients that might want to pay me. And so the money just dried up. And that was like, so I started kind of looking full time in October for a job. So it took me 5 months basically to get a job.
Okay.
And it wasn't the best time to be looking for a job. You know, the market's been pretty rough the past couple of years, but I don't know if there's ever really a good time to look for a job. Like I know that it's been better at times for
Yeah.
juniors, but the fact is like, um, getting your first job as a junior is a miserable experience. It's going to probably take 3 to 6 months, and you just have to power through it. There's no like, it's going all you need is one. All you need is
That's
one
right. You just need
offer.
one yes.
And so you just like, it I thought that because I had some real world projects, some real world experience that that timeline would be shorter for me. I was thinking I can get a job in a month or 2. And that wasn't the case. Maybe I could have if it wasn't end of year. You know, I started in October, but what helped me through the process mentally was just realizing like, hey, I just need to. This is going to take a while, and I need to figure out how to pay the bills otherwise. And so, you know, kind of kept doing some of my music side gigs to pay the bills in the meantime. But just like, if you can have the mentality, it's going to take you 6 months, and you're prepared for it mentally and financially, it makes it so much easier. And then it's like it takes off the pressure of the job search because it feels like you should spend 40 hours a week doing the job
Oh,
search. That works for some people, but you know, it, it's not it's not really how it works. Um, I kind of had a little bit of confirmation bias with the job search process where what Aaron had recommended, and this may be what you recommend too, is to take um, the I forget what he called this approach, but where you're doing like 5 or 10 jobs that you're trying to get, and you're just trying to make connections. Like your primary goal is to make a connection, and you're not doing the like I guess the spray and pray approach where you're just cold
Yes.
applying to many places. And so I had no luck with connections. All of my software friends who were at tech companies were like, our companies are freezing hiring. There's nothing I can do. And so I kind of gave up on that and just started doing cold applications. And I was getting a lot of round one interviews. I think it was around like 10% of my cold applications would convert into a round one interview. And that felt really good.
Pretty good. Yeah.
But there's no correlation really between the round ones and getting beyond that because um, like my little bit of experience did help me because I was like, oh, this guy has an interesting process or project. We'll throw him in the pool. But it seems like hiring managers need like a quota of a certain amount of candidates they throw in the round one interview. But
That's right.
like really, there's only a handful that are actually, they're still going to like, if you don't have the 5 years of experience, they're still not going to let you through. And, I would have had to like absolutely amaze them to get through. And even then, I don't think that that even matters because I think that the person doing the round one is usually not the person making the hiring decision. And so even if you get a yes in the round one, they're going to be like, well, he doesn't have 5 years of experience, and then just throw it out. So all that to say, what ended up getting my job was a connection through. It was actually a former Parsity Project Shift student who I connected with on Web3 stuff, and we would meet on Zoom and just chat about Web3 projects we were working on. And she was working on at Paylocity at the time, and I just randomly at the end of one of our conversations, like, "Hey, is your company hiring?" And she said, "Yeah, I'll refer you." And I applied to a job that, like some random back end job, and then a spot on her team opened up, and she could hand my resume to the manager, who's my manager now, and that was it. Like the interview went really well. He liked me, and I think that he was burned by a previous candidate where they were working 2 jobs on the side, and, like, he
Oh,
was, like, a perfect candidate, but they were a horrible worker because he was working 2 jobs, and so after that, like, my manager basically said, "I'm not hiring anybody without a personal recommendation." And so, like, I understand that now being on the other side of it. It was really annoying when I wasn't getting through round one interviews, but that's why. It's because these people have been burned as well. So that's why the personal recommendation works. And suppose he jokes that this is what gets me the job, but I'm not convinced that this isn't why I got the job. But he had guitars on his wall. One of them was kind of rare, and I recognized it, and I said
yeah.
something about it, and he said, "Well, you got the job," and then I eventually did. So it just kind of that's how it worked out.
People underestimate that human connection piece. Like everybody underestimates or discounts the power of luck in that first job, or even really any job. Like I don't care
Yeah.
whether you're going to Google or whether you're going to like the no name startup down the street. It's like there is a bit of luck involved. Like you stay consistent, you have the technical foundation. Then it was kind of a matter of time. But then I always imagine like, what if you gave up during that hard time? Because a lot of people probably would have been like, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm out of here. And then they would have never like reached that period where they finally got that opportunity to go in there. And now you're what, 2 years into this particular role?
11 months actually. So it's February now. So at the end of like the 27th is my 1 year anniversary.
Wow.
So yeah,
Early congrats, man. That's amazing.
thank you.
That's kind of crazy actually to be like to switch careers and you go through this gamut and then at the other end is like kind of like a new life. But for many people, I don't know how much it's changed your life, but I am curious, like how has your life changed since like learning to code and now being a full-time software engineer?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. It's not like my lifestyle's like we actually did move. It's not like I, bought a new car or anything, but it's just like you take it for granted, but it is really nice just like not having the stress of wondering how you're gonna pay your bills. Like I can go to the doctor now for 20 bucks. I don't have to worry about like during COVID I sprained my foot and I was like super stressed about like paying for an X-ray and
Yeah.
it's like that stuff is just I don't have to worry about that anymore. The 401k is trending the right direction and It makes a big difference just in terms of just quality of life day to day and stress levels but, when when I got laid off at the beginning of COVID, I actually could have got my job back, like, 6 months later, and I opted not to, but if you would have told me that it would have taken me 3 months or 3 years from, March 2020 to February 2023 to get the job, like, I don't think I would have done it. Like, I couldn't have.
Right.
Like, nobody I don't nobody can say, like, "Yeah, I'll commit to 3 years of a job change, unemployed." It's impossible,
Yeah.
and so I kinda got, again, another, like, luck. COVID, the pandemic kinda worked to my advantage in that sense. Yeah, there are definitely points, especially in the job search, that would have been easy to give up. I think especially if you're prone to, just, um, the self-doubt with if you can do it as a developer, I
Mhm.
think it would be easy to quit, and, I think my contracting work helped me there because then I was able to see very quickly that I could do it. It was very small projects, but, like, in a month, like, I had to go from, "I'm not sure if I can, figure out this project," to, "Oh, this project's live and it works, and I can do it." So, like, having that confidence from the freelance projects of knowing that I could do the job probably did help push through the low times of that job search that
Oh yeah.
not everyone has if they're just coming out of a boot camp. You just have to have a little bit more trust in yourself there, I guess.
Yeah, that's difficult because like everybody suffers from imposter syndrome for sure. Whether you get the job and you're on the next one, or especially when you're trying to get that first job, it can feel like there's a lot of barriers. Like, man, should I learn more? Should I learn this now? Someone said I should learn cybersecurity or
Oh, yeah.
Kubernetes, or now I need to add this to my tool belt and that to my tool belt. And a lot of times it's like, yeah, you make sure you have a technical foundation, but you're right. I mean, let's be honest. Learning, like knowing enough React is honestly enough to get a lot of jobs out there. I think people like
Yeah.
overestimate just how much like software engineers do in an individual contributor role. It'd be really weird to have like a full DevOps shop in one person. Like, oh yeah, I do the Kubernetes cluster and the AWS, and I write the front end and the back end, and I do like that would be a team of people. Maybe at a really small
Yeah.
start, not any real company.
Yeah, no, I think actually my company was hiring only full stack developers for a while, and now it's not that way. You'd be surprised well, you wouldn't, but I think a lot of boot campers would be surprised at the React skill at, a lot of companies. Like, our company is all .NET stuff, and
Mhm.
it was largely backend engineers for a long time. Like, the focus to grow the company was building out features, and so that meant a lot of backend, and the front end didn't matter so much, and so
Yeah,
now, like, my team is helping modernize the experience, but there's not a lot of React skill, and it's not that there's not good developers, they're just not, React is still, like, relatively new in tech world. It's what, been around 10 years-ish, and it's probably been, the industry standard for even less. So it's not like if you were started developing 20 years ago, it's not that unreasonable that you wouldn't know that much React. So that's where you can, like, for us as junior devs who are coming in learning just React, this is where you can really help a team. And you may not think so, but it actually is, like, super helpful to just be able to put together a React page. Um, that's enough to be useful.
very good point.
And in terms of, yeah, you were kinda getting to the, like, during the job search, there's a lot of, like, learn this, learn that. I needed to learn, AWS or Next or TypeScript or whatever, and I don't think it really matters what you learn during that phase. I think
Yeah,
it's probably best for you to focus on what you know and get really good at it and just make projects that are really good. I saw a tweet recently on, like, a kinda a very simple career unlock being for people is just reading through docs. Like, so many few developers actually take the time to read through docs. React has a brand new docs that they just launched in the last
yeah, they're
couple of
great.
years, react.dev. Just literally read, spend your time reading every page there, and then make React apps that are live on GitHub. That's enough to get a job. That's gonna put you, a level up above even people on your team because people will come to you and ask for React advice.
Oh yeah, I think people way overestimate just how involved your average developer is, like in code, like outside of work or in like if you're on LinkedIn and Twitter all day, you might have this idea that like, oh wow, all developers are super passionate, and really into their work. I'm like, no, that's just this vocal minority that's online all the time, that's permanently
Totally.
online. A lot of people don't know anything. I mean, that's a great point. I remember joining a company and like all the back end guys didn't know CSS, and I like knew nothing. It was a C#.net shop, and
Hmm.
like, I'm way out of my league. But then they were so terrible at CSS that I found little ways to be useful. They're like, I can't center this, the typical can't center a div thing. It's like years ago. And I'm like, yeah, I could figure that out. And they're like, oh, thank God. I'm like, wow, okay, this is my way to do that. And you're right. Like I joined a team that was very new to React, and I'd been writing it for a while. And that was like my time to shine, just doing that. It was really
Yeah.
a good way to like come on and be effective pretty quickly. And by the way, quick plug for Parsity. We're now using Next.js. Um, just added some TypeScript foundational stuff to get just used to it
Great.
now, because it seems so ubiquitous and like quickly becoming an
Yeah.
industry standard. Um, Before I let you go, I'm curious, um, what advice would you give to those people that are learning to code and to change careers? What are some things you wish maybe you had done differently, or things you would generally tell people like, hey, this worked out for me that they should be doing?
Yeah. I think just, general advice, like, it's worth it. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not that far away. Um, do whatever you need to do to power through, figure out how to pay your bills and just like do it every day. Do some amount of it every day. Doesn't mean 8 hours a day, like 30 minutes a day, an hour a day, whatever. Just keep taking steps forward. It's totally worth it. And I think this may not be true, but I actually do kind of think that anyone can be a developer. So if you have that thought at any point, like I can't be a developer, that's for other people. I don't think it's really true. Obviously, it's a very specific skill set, but there are so many different types of developers that you need. You need super technical ones. You need creative ones. So you can do it. So like all the motivation stuff, there's that. In terms of practical things, I think just what I just said, like whatever you're learning, if it's probably React, if you're listening to this podcast, or at least in JavaScript land, just focus on that. I do think TypeScript is one of the things that is probably worth learning. That's one of the ways I made my mark on the team. Like my mentor at Parsity recommended I start learning TypeScript with my final project, and then that first gig that I got, doing contract work was in TypeScript, and so is my job now. And I've actually been able to it's kind of one of my I've kind of become the TypeScript guy on our team because, a lot of the developers on our team, they started in, C# or something and, worked in JavaScript, and our repo was converted to TypeScript only a couple years ago, and so I've been able to kind of be the TypeScript guy just by having that. And so, that that doesn't necessarily have to be TypeScript. You can find your own unique skill, but I would say whatever you like learning, go for it. But yeah, just focus on the simple things. Focus on the most important thing is that you're solving problems and you're showing people real code. Like, um, I think that's what got me through I mentioned that the first interview with my boss was the round two, and that's where I checked the box on the personal thing with the guitar, and I
Mhm.
had the personal recommendation. And so then I think round three was just all about showing that, hey, this guy can code. It wasn't that I was an expert. It was just like, hey, I can do React stuff, and so just do that. Just be able to like, if somebody asks you um, you know how to render something in React, you should be able to answer it. And hopefully, you've already answered it with like a handful of products on GitHub. So
Yeah.
um, I would say like more than well, actually, if it's a portfolio website, that's fine because that can get you can get something online with that. But just pick any idea you have, probably what you do for a final project, and just keep working on that and get it online. And just yeah, I think that's probably your best thing to focus on because that gives you something to work on, something to learn, and then real code to show uh, in job interviews.
I like it. I love it. Yeah. This has been really interesting. You have a windy path, but it's also a little common. I think no one has like this straightforward path. I think we all have this idea like learn to code, do this, get a job immediately. And like the reality is like, yeah, people do. And a lot of people have a more windy path. But this is really interesting. I'm really curious to see where you go. Do you write online, by the way? Are you online, like writing about stuff?
Not as much as it's something I've thought about doing recently, just in line of where we started with like enjoying teaching. And so I'll probably never be like a content creator, but I would like to write more. And so in terms of finding me, I don't really post on Twitter, but I'm always on Twitter. It's just at Nathan Drake. And then on LinkedIn, just look for Nathan Drake. And please connect with me there. Feel free to DM me, ask me questions. Those are probably the two places to find me the best.
Awesome.
And if I do start writing, you'll see it there.
Yeah, I mean, I really would encourage you to. You have a lot of great advice and, an interesting story, and you're just good at teaching. I mean, when I saw you do that, I was like, wow, this guy's really good at this. So yeah, I would love to see you more online. But people can find you. Your information will be in the show notes. Again, thanks so much for coming on today and sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out Parsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our Dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.